At the beginning of the story, we are shown a mountain filled with numerous houses, and at the base, several people are working tirelessly. These individuals are crafting something while a girl dips her finger into the substance they are making and licks it. She eagerly demands it, calling it candy, but her actions disrupt the work. Annoyed, one of the workers pushes her away, causing her to fall to the ground. The others working nearby momentarily stop to watch the commotion. Here, we meet our protagonist, Huowang, who glares at the girl with anger and exclaims, "Foolish girl, this isn't candy, it's medicine!" He then mutters, "No matter how much you explain to these people, they never understand." The girl turns her gaze towards him, seemingly oblivious, her only desire focused on eating the substance. The people working there all appear strange, almost as if they don't comprehend right or wrong. A madness seems to linger in the air. Suddenly, the sharp cry of a girl breaks the murmur of work. Huowang turns and sees a man grabbing a girl forcefully. Laughing cruelly, the man says, "I want to play with your body," his meaning unmistakable. The girl, with her white hair and helpless demeanor, pleads, "Don't do this to me," yet her cries only fuel the laughter of the others around them, their grotesque amusement echoing eerily. Enraged by the scene, Huowang picks up a tool he was working with and hurls it at the man, striking him hard on the head. The man cries out in pain, clutching his head, while Huowang stands unmoving, glaring at him. The white-haired girl hides behind Huowang, and the injured man says angrily, "You don't know what a big mistake you have made. If the master comes to know about all this, he will kill you." Huowang coldly declares, "I am not afraid of the master at all. To me, he is completely insignificant." Everyone falls silent, shocked by his audacity. No one had ever spoken of the master in such a way. The injured man, still writhing in pain, growls, "Do you have any idea what you've done? If the master learns of this, you'll be dead." But Huowang remains unfazed, his fiery glare unwavering. Before long, a guard appears, starting to show his foot, and he says, "Stop doing all this nonsense," silencing the commotion with his mere presence. When the guard's face is fully revealed, he is wearing white clothes, looking at them, and says, "The master has summoned Li and Wang." Wang is the girl who had been licking the substance earlier. The girl happily follows the guard, dancing, and says that the master has called her so that he can give her candy. She is delighted by the thought of receiving more. The injured man smirks triumphantly and says, "See, I told you. Now you'll pay for what you've done." He is so happy that the master will punish him. You can see the smile on his face. As they proceed, the white-haired girl holds Huowang's clothes with her hand and says, "Don't go there, please. It's too dangerous." She fears that his defiance might lead to his death. But Huowang shrugs off her hand without a word and walks on. Her concern is evident in her eyes, while the candy-obsessed girl skips beside them, joyfully oblivious. As they leave the confines of the mountain, Huowang contemplates his actions. He whispers to himself, "Why am I so angry? Why did I let this happen? Maybe I shouldn't take these things so seriously." He takes a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but his reflection is interrupted when the candy-obsessed girl pushes him playfully. Annoyed, he grabs her hand and demands, "What is your problem? Stop bothering me." She hesitates for a moment before placing a finger to her lips and asking innocently, "Do you want candy?" Without a word, Huowang accepts the so-called candy, knowing it's the medicine they've been making. He says nothing, but the girl beams with joy, placing her finger in her mouth and grinning. "The master is so kind. He gives us lots of candy," she says, her childlike demeanor masking the strange reality of their world. They both arrive at the master's place, where a fire is burning and something is being cooked in a massive pot. The master is working there. Upon seeing him, the girl says, "Master, thank you so much for calling me." She says it with respect, bowing her head. The master, turning around, lets out an ugly laugh and says, "You people made me wait." His teeth are very unattractive, and there's blood on his face. His master jumps behind them, grabs the girl by the neck, and throws her into the pot where the master was working. He laughs loudly as if he finds great pleasure in all of this. But the poor girl, now inside the pot, says, "Is all of this candy, master? And you threw me into this pot to give me so much candy?" The poor crazy girl still thinks everything is candy. Then the master starts crushing her. Her bones shatter and her stomach becomes twisted. The worst part is the medicine, and whatever they make, it's all to break people down like this, to twist their bodies. Li, standing there, who couldn't do anything, could only watch from behind. Everything was so horrifying that he couldn't even open his mouth. He was terrified, watching it all unfold. Lee doesn't know why the master is doing this. He is breaking the girl's bones, arms, legs, and all her organs, grinding them into paste. Then Lee sees some other girls, and the master puts the paste into a big cauldron. The master says, "The fire needs to be stronger. We have to make this medicine." That's when Lee realizes the medicine his master gives him is actually made from human paste. Suddenly, after seeing all this, Lee starts saying, "This is all fake. None of this is real. It's all a lie." He keeps saying this. When the master cooks the girl's paste, the smell rises, and the master enjoys it as if it's a very nice smell. Lee keeps saying, "This is all fake. Nothing is real." Why is he saying this? We'll find out later in the story. While Lee is talking to himself, saying, "Everything happening here is fake. Nothing is real," the master hears him by mistake. The master thinks Lee is insulting him and calling him Fart Master. Even though Lee didn't say anything directly, the master gets angry and turns around and looks at him furiously. And in such a terrifying moment, his master says something that makes the whole scene incredibly funny. His master asks Lee, "What did you say? What am I?" The master then asks again whether what Lee said was true or not. But Lee is just talking to himself, saying, "This is all fake. This master's voice is fake." He keeps calling it fake. At that moment, the master attacks him, yelling, "You dog! Didn't you hear what I said?" The master attacks him just to get an answer, but Lee keeps calling everything fake and doesn't even hear what the master is saying. This makes the master furious, and in his anger, he charges at Lee, shouting, "How dare you not listen to me while I'm asking you something important? Instead, you're talking to yourself." Just as the master is about to touch Lee, everything suddenly stops. Lee starts disappearing. His master is standing in front of him, but everything freezes in place, and his body slowly begins to vanish. A green light starts glowing brighter and brighter. Then, when his eyes open, we see a boy in a hospital. His condition is really bad. He's restrained in the hospital, and the only sound he can hear is the beeping of the machines. He becomes quiet, no longer calling anything fake. Even the sound of his heartbeat is clear to him because the room is completely empty. He's all alone. It's so silent that the only thing he can hear is the sound of his own heartbeat. So, it's clear that Lee is in the hospital, and this takes the story in an unexpected turn. There is no need to confuse, guys. You will know everything further in this story. Then, a doctor asks him what he saw in his hallucination this time, and if his condition is better than before. Lee replies, "No, nothing has changed. It's just like before, or maybe even worse." He says he's been seeing terrifying things that feel as if they're real, as if everything is actually happening. Whenever he closes his eyes, he ends up in someone else's body. Everything feels real to him when he's in those hallucinations. He can feel it all, as if he's living as a real human in that other world. The doctor asks him what he saw this time now. Lee tells the doctor that this time, he saw the master of that place crashing a girl into a pot, making paste out of her, cooking her in a big pot, and turning her into medicine. Even Lee himself is shocked, wondering how anyone could make medicine like that. In front of his eyes, he saw someone being killed and their flesh being turned into medicine. The doctor had written all this in his tablet and listened to him very carefully, but then he asked the doctor if the hallucinations he was seeing had any meaning. Maybe it seems that all this is connected to someone and that he might have been chosen for some task or mission. He feels this way, and while looking at his hands, he asks all this to the doctor. The doctor responds by saying, "You don't need to think so much about justice. All this is nonsense. None of this is true." Hearing this answer from the doctor, he doesn't feel much happiness and doesn't say anything. Just looking into his eyes, it seems he has heard this answer from the doctor before, and it doesn't mean anything, just like all doctors keep telling patients not to do all this, not to see all this. This doctor also gives the same answer, which is why the doctor's answer isn't that interesting, so he doesn't listen and doesn't pay attention. But the doctor says, "When you stop seeing all this, only then can you leave this hospital. Without that, you will have to stay in this mental hospital," and then we find out that he is in a mental hospital. The doctor tells him that he has to remember that everything is a lie and nothing is true. When he gets better, he can leave this hospital. Staying in a mental hospital at such a young age can be very difficult, so he is not very happy to hear the doctor's answer because he is also a young boy, and it would be very nice for him to go outside. But due to his mental health, he cannot go out. The biggest thing is that he always has to spend time alone in this room because this is a mental hospital. Then the doctor leaves, and he looks at the doctor sadly. Maybe he wishes to be free and for everything to be okay. Before leaving the room, the doctor says one last time, "If you don't take these things too seriously and think of them as fake, you will be able to leave this place soon." A girl was standing next to the doctor, who was about to enter the room, and she overheard everything the doctor said. After the doctor leaves, the girl enters the room, smiling, and says, "Did you hear what the doctor said? You can be discharged from this hospital soon." The girl didn't hear the entire conversation. She only heard that the doctor mentioned leaving the hospital, so she is happy. But he looks at the girl and perhaps thinks, this isn't true. His condition is even worse, and nothing has changed. Everything is still the same. The girl doesn't know this. Then, the story shows the girl's full face and body. She is his childhood friend. She smiles and says, "Always listen to the doctor, and you'll be able to leave this place soon." Lee calls him Nana and looks at him as if his senses have left him. When his friend comes in front, Nana looks at him with affectionate eyes, making it clear that the girl likes Lee. Lee smiles at Nana, and his laughter is so ugly that the girl says, "Stop laughing, you look very bad." But Lee doesn't listen to him and laughs even more. He is happy that her friend has come to see her, perhaps for this reason. Then the girl starts taking something out of her bag, maybe something for him. After searching in her bag, she shows Lee and says, "Ta-da! Look what I brought for you." It's his school books, and since the exam is 6 months away, he can prepare for it here. That's why the girl requested the teacher to bring personal use books just for him, so that when he gets better, his studies won't be behind and he can take the exam. But Lee, seeing the school books, says, "No, did you bring this for me as a gift? What kind of gift is this?" He puts his hand on his cheeks and says he doesn't like it at all because he is already bored all day in the mental hospital. Now, his childhood friend has brought school books from the teacher for exam preparation, so he can study here. Because of this, he might get even more bored. His friend, taking the book, hits him on the head and says, "I didn't just bring a book for your studies. Did you think I would only bring books to increase your tension? You think I'm such a bad friend?" And he gives him a video game with a smile. When Lee goes to take the video game, Nana raises his hand and doesn't give it to him, jokingly playing with Lee. He says, "First, call me Big Sister, then I'll give you this video game." To get the video game, Lee calls him Big Sister, but Lee's face was so close to him that his friend gets shy and looks at his lips. And Lee's breath leaves on his face, which makes him shyly give the game to him. As soon as he takes the game, he starts to play, just like that, lying down, and he says, maybe passing time in this hospital won't be so difficult now because of this game. He is very happy that his friend brought him a game. Now, perhaps because of playing the game, he won't be so bored staying alone in this place. His friend, listening to him, keeps looking at him with loving eyes. His friend is happy to see him like this and says, "Don't spend the whole day playing games, also study. I've brought a book for you." But Lee doesn't pay attention to his friend's words and is busy playing the game. That's when his friend, Nana, tells him that he remembers his promise. Lee suddenly stops playing the game and says, "Yes, I remember." And, going close to his face, he says, "We will go to college together, and we will join the same college. I remember this promise." Lee suddenly hugs his friend, and while hugging, he says, "I will leave this place soon and try my best to get better so that I can go to college with you." Nana, hearing this, smiles and tightly hugs Lee. Nana is waiting for the day when they both will go to college together, and maybe Lee is also waiting for the day when they will go to college together. He will try his best to leave this place as soon as possible because no one wants to stay in a mental hospital for their entire life. They kept talking for some time, but it got very late. Lee realized that Nana might be late getting home, so Lee offered to drop Nana off outside the hospital, saying, "It's already very late." Nana agreed and said, "All right, let's go." Just as Lee was about to put on his slippers, something unexpected happened. His head started hurting terribly, and he began to feel strange. He couldn't even stand properly. Suddenly he thought, "What's happening to me?" Gripping his head in pain, he shouted, "My head feels like it's going to explode." He couldn't stand properly, so he held onto the table to avoid falling. That's when he notices a medicine pestle on the table, the same one he uses in his hallucinations. Maybe he was hallucinating again. But the strange thing is that until now, he would only hallucinate when he closed his eyes. Now it seemed like everything from his hallucinations was appearing in real life. While he stood there holding his head in pain, his friend Nana asked, "What happened? Are you okay? Is your head hurting? Tell me what's wrong." But Lee doesn't answer his friend. Instead, he keeps muttering to himself, I followed everything the doctor said, took all the medicines as prescribed, so why is this happening to me? He couldn't understand why this was happening. For the past few days, he had followed the doctor's instructions and taken his medicines on time, but nothing was getting better. Lost in these thoughts, he suddenly pauses. Then, in front of his friend, he pretends that everything is fine. Smiling, he acts like nothing happened and says, "Did I scare you?" He makes it seem like it was all just a joke to scare his friend, as if nothing had actually happened to him. Lee doesn't want to worry his friend Nana, so he hides everything and acts like nothing is wrong. Nana turns his face away and says, "Stop doing these childish things. You scare me. You're not a kid anymore, and you joke about such serious matters." Then his friend gets angry and starts to leave. Lee calls out from behind, "Wait, I was just joking." He then looks at the table again and checks to see if what he saw earlier was real or not. He carefully examines it, but there's nothing there. He feels like maybe it's because of his hallucinations, or that he's been thinking too much about it. Seeing nothing on the table, he follows his friend to apologize, saying, "Don't be mad at me, forgive me." Both of them walk outside the hospital, where other patients were roaming around. All those patients were staring at them, probably because Lee was shouting loudly, asking for forgiveness, which caught everyone's attention. But Lee watches Nana as he is walking away and wonders, is Nana really angry? Is he ignoring me? He thinks about this, and just then, Nana places a finger on his cheek in a cute way. Maybe it was just his friend acting like how Lee had scared Nana earlier, which made him do this. But Lee wasn't acting, something Nana didn't know. Nana then says, "I'll come to meet you again next week. Take care of yourself, eat properly, and read the book I gave you. Stay safe here and live well." Nana cares deeply for Lee, which we can tell from his words. Lee smiles and says, "Okay, I'll take care of myself. You take care too." Lee feels happy knowing he has such a caring friend who worries so much about him. Then Nana walks out of the hospital gate, waving goodbye, and Lee raises his hand, saying loudly, "Take care of yourself, Nana," as Nana leaves. Then he goes back inside the hospital. As he walks to his room, he keeps thinking about the medicine pestle he saw on the table. While thinking about it, he starts talking to himself. Has my mental health gotten worse? Maybe this was the first time he experienced hallucinations like this in reality, which made him anxious. Until now, he only had hallucinations when he closed his eyes, where he would wake up as a boy in that strange world. But now he was starting to see everything from his hallucinations in real life too. He's scared that if his mental state gets worse, he won't be able to go to college with his friend, and he might not even be able to join college this year. The promise he made to Nana might also be broken, but then he reminds himself of what his dad said, that the doctor is very good and will fix him soon. He trusts his dad a lot and thinks that his dad must have chosen the best doctor for him. Then he raises his hand and shouts loudly, saying, "I'm going to go completely crazy living in this place with all these crazy people, and they've sent me to this mental hospital." Suddenly, he stops shouting and feels something in his pocket. He looks in his pocket and says, "What's in my pocket?" Because he hadn't put anything in there, so how could anything get in? When he takes the item out of his pocket, he sees it's the same candy the girl had given him. Seeing it, he feels as if he's lost his mind. He couldn't believe it. He wonders how this candy could be in his pocket, how it could have come here, and he couldn't understand anything at that moment. He says, "This is the same candy the girl gave me, so how did it end up in my pocket?" And he takes that thing with his finger and puts it in his mouth. Actually, he is checking if it is real or not by testing it because his hallucination is so real that he can't understand what is real and what is fake. When he puts it in his mouth, he could feel its taste. He didn't know what its taste would be like because this thing is made by crushing humans into paste. Then he started to feel that maybe his hallucination had started to come into reality too. He began to run towards the doctor with that thing. If the doctor sees this thing, it will be good, and he will realize whether it is real or not. The most important thing is that because of this, people will stop calling him crazy. Maybe he will even get a discharge from this mental hospital. That's why he starts running, but suddenly something happens and he stops. He says, "If this is true, that whatever I get in my hallucinations comes into reality, then it will be very good for me." He talks to himself like this. He doesn't know what suddenly happened, but his eyes start glowing in the dark and his face becomes very terrifying. He starts telling himself that this is a very good opportunity. If he finds anything in the hallucination, it will be beneficial for him. There might be some plan in his mind, which is why he doesn't go to the doctor and doesn't tell the doctor about it. After this, we see Lee in a world of hallucinations, where he yells at everyone asking, "Do you people have money?" The people there seem to not understand the meaning of money. Lee then shouts even louder, "Don't you know what money means? Silver? Gold? Don't you have something?" He asks them for something, saying he only wants to borrow it for a short while. It was clear that he was testing if whatever he took in this world would appear in the real world. Maybe that was his plan, but the people don't understand anything and they just keep staring at Lee. Taking a deep breath, Lee sighs and says, "No matter how much you explain to these people, they won't understand anything. All of them are addicts, completely hooked on drugs." Perhaps that's why they just scratched their heads and stared at him, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Suddenly, the girl with white hair calls Lee from behind and says, "Lee, brother, can you come with me for a moment?" She asks him to come with her alone. Lee goes to talk to the girl alone. There, the girl gives Lee a gold bracelet that she had hidden on her foot to keep it safe and unnoticed in this place. The white-haired girl happily calls him Lee brother as she hands it over to him. Perhaps she is giving it to him because Lee had saved her once before. Maybe that's why she decided to give it to him, knowing she could never leave this place or use it herself. So, keeping it with her was pointless. Lee carefully examines the ring in his hand and says, "It's small, but it's gold, so I'll keep it." He puts it securely in his pocket and promises to return it later. After that, Lee offers the girl a piece of candy and tells her, "This is really good and delicious." If you're thinking he gave her the same candy the girl had once given him, no, it's not that candy. He gives her real candy, though how he got it remains unknown for now. We'll find out later in the story. While he was handing her the candy, everyone behind them was watching the two and laughing eerily and slowly in a terrifying manner. Among the people watching, one man says, "This is getting interesting to watch." Maybe they were thinking something else when the girl called Lee alone, but nothing like that happened. Just then, a guard arrives behind them and says, "What are you all doing here, leaving your work?" Everyone's eyes widen in shock, and they immediately stop laughing and talking. It becomes clear that all the people in this place are extremely afraid of the master and his guards. The guard says, "Focus on your work. You weren't brought here to waste time chatting." Hearing this, everyone starts returning to their tasks. The guard then looks at Lee and the white-haired girl because they were the reason everyone had gathered there. The guard notices Lee taking the gold and gives him a very suspicious look, thinking to himself, "Are you planning to make medicine with that gold?" The guard is suspicious of what he is going to do with the gold because he will never be able to leave this place, so what is the use of taking it? Lee keeps looking at the guard with his sharp eyes, and maybe he was thinking, "Why is the guard looking at me for so long?" Before leaving, the guard tells Lee, "Get back to work. If the master's medicine is not ready on time, he'll turn you into the medicine." The guard had something shiny tied with a rope around his waist, and it was glowing brightly. Lee notices it and asks, "Is that an ancient jade pendant?" Looking at it, Lee smiles, and from his expression, we understand that he wants to take it. He feels it must be very ancient and old, so if he could somehow take it to his world, he could sell it and get a lot of money. Later, at 3 a.m., when everyone is asleep, Lee sneaks into the guard's cave to take that object. He finds it very easily because it glows brightly in the night. His luck was good because the guard had apparently gone outside on patrol during the night. Lee might have known this, which is why he timed it perfectly. Holding the jade pendant in his hand, Lee says to himself and thinks of his childhood friend Nana, "Maybe now I can pay the college fees and cover my hospital expenses." Lee is very poor, which is why he is doing all this. This is also the reason he initially asked everyone for any gold or silver so he could take it back to the real world, sell it, and end the poverty for both himself and his childhood friend Nana. With great happiness, he runs down the stairs, holding the pendant tightly, saying excitedly, "I found an antique pendant! I found a pendant!" As he rushes down the stairs, he notices a light. It looks like someone is coming up the stairs. He thinks it could be a guard, and if they see him at this time, it could become a big problem. Lee panics completely and has no idea what to do. Just then, the terrifying guard appears behind him and says quietly, "What are you doing here so late at night?" Hearing this, Lee is utterly shocked. He can't even bring himself to turn around. He's so scared, thinking that he has been caught. He imagines the guard might report him to the master, who will punish or even kill him. This is the same guy from whose cave he stole the jade pendant. Lee turns around trembling and says, "I didn't do anything, I was just passing through." But then he notices the guard's clothes, which are different, so he asks why the guard is dressed like that. The guard doesn't answer and instead grabs Lee by his clothes, dragging him along. While dragging him, the guard says, "People are escaping from here, and you'll have to come with us." There were other guards with him, and as they pulled Lee along, one of them added, "If you stay here, you'll die one day. Come with us." Lee asks in disbelief, "Are you guys really escaping from this place?" He finds it hard to believe because they are all guards, and the idea of guards running away surprises him. Suddenly, the angry guard shoves Lee roughly and yells, "You'll never be able to escape from this place if you don't come with us. What did you think? That you could bribe us with money and tips to get out of here?" It's then that Lee realizes the guard must have assumed that when he collected gold from the girl and asked others for money, his plan was to gather everything and bribe the master or the guards to escape from this place. This is why the guards seem so suspicious of him. But in reality, Lee was collecting all of this so he could take it to his world and use it to help his friend and end his poverty, something the guard didn't know. But the biggest thing is that all the guards want to escape from here, which shows how dangerous this place is. This is where the story takes a different turn because Lee thought that maybe the master and the guards had some kind of freedom in this place, but now even the guards want to escape. You can imagine how dangerous this place really is. Lee doesn't say anything to the guard and thinks to himself, "No matter what happens, I'll return to my real world. I've gotten what I wanted." He presses his eyes tightly, trying to hold back the emotions, to stay focused on the hospital. Then, he wakes up in the hospital, breathing heavily and exhausted. So Lee did this because if he stayed in that place, they might have taken him away, and there could have been a fight. Anything could have happened. That's why he came out of the hallucination, because he thinks that if he comes out of the hallucination, everything will stop because it's his hallucination. And that's why he closed his eyes and returned to his real world. When his eyes open, we see it was night, and he was tied to the bed. Maybe the doctor also sleeps too, and whenever he closes his eyes, the doctor probably ties him up so that he can't escape. And maybe he does something when he is in the world of hallucination. That's why the doctor keeps him tied up. But looking up, he says, it's still very night and all the nurses are probably still sleeping. He needs to check if the pendant and gold he took have come into this world or not. That's why, if there were a nurse, they would have untied his hands and feet, and he would have been able to check. But he has to wait until morning. He has no other option. So, he closes his eyes again and goes to see what is happening in that place, because he has nothing to do at this late hour. Then, he comes back to the same place and stands there, and all the guards have probably left. Maybe they ran away, leaving him there. He laughs and says, "This is my hallucination. No one can ever hurt me because this is all not real." So, he thinks, how can they hurt me? And he laughs. Then, early in the morning, in the world of hallucination, a man comes running into a cave and says, "Everyone, stop sleeping. Master has called everyone right now. Hurry up and come." The man speaks as if something has happened. Maybe all the guards have fled, and that's why the master, having found out, must have called everyone. Then, everyone wakes up and starts talking among themselves, wondering why they were called so early in the morning in such a rush. One man says, "Hurry up, or we'll be in big trouble if we're late." Meanwhile, on the other side, Lee, lying down, is deep in thought. He knows why the master has called everyone. He knows it's because the guards have fled, and that's why the master summoned them. Soon, everyone arrives at the place where the master had called them. Probably a lot of people work at that place. That is why so many people have gathered at one place. The people start whispering among themselves, asking, "What happened? Do you know why we were called?" Then, the master comes out of his house and says, "All of you have come here, right?" Lee standing there thinking, what is this old man planning to do? Damn, he treats us like his pet dog. Whenever he calls, we have to run to him. And if someone comes late, he kills them alive. The master says, "Last night at 3 a.m., some people were planning to escape from here, and they were my own guards." Then we see that the master has caught those 4 people and tied them with ropes. Seeing this, Lee Shock thought they escaped that reason master call everyone in the morning. Then master says, "This old man has been greatly hurt because his most trusted guards wanted to run away without telling him." He drags them in front of all the workers, and the master says, "The rules of this place are clear. Reward for competence and death for betrayal." Maybe he called all of them so they could see such a terrifying punishment so that no one would try to think about escaping from here again. That's why he must have called them. The guard looks at Lee, terrified, and fear is visible in his eyes. He knew that he would die. Lee looks at the guard and talks to himself about how quickly these guards were caught. How pathetic. They are the master's favorite guards, and they know this place very well. Then the master grabs the rope tightly and throws it with great force, then performs magic and says, "Open!" Immediately, the ground seems to split open, and from inside, black octopus-like tentacles start emerging. These tentacles begin killing the 4 guards in a very hideous manner. The guard screams in pain so loudly that everyone in the area is terrified. Even Lee was so scared just from hearing the sound. He wasn't looking in that direction and had no idea what was happening behind him. Only the screams and painful cries reached his ears, shaking his hand out of fear. Out of terror, he starts saying, "This is all fake. Everything is a lie. None of this is real. It's all a hallucination I've created. None of it is true." He keeps repeating this to himself, just as the doctor had told him, to not take these things seriously because they were all fake. There, all the people were just standing, trembling with fear. Suddenly, a black octopus tentacle comes right above his head, very close to him. At the same time, the black octopus's tentacle passes by him, carrying the guard whose head it had pierced through. Seeing this, Lee is shocked. He starts thinking, how is this possible? Did I create something so terrifying with my hallucination? Something so horrifying that even I am scared just looking at it? He begins to wonder, if I didn't create this, then maybe the pain the guard is feeling could be real. But how can that be? The doctor told me all of this is fake. And if I feel pain in my hallucination, does that mean I'll feel the same pain in my real body? He keeps thinking about all this. To calm himself down, he reminds himself, no, I'm overthinking. The doctor said not to take any of this seriously. Maybe I'm just overthinking, and that's why all of this is happening. He convinces himself that he is thinking too much about it and that nothing like this will actually happen. He reassures himself that hallucinations can never cause pain and that he trusts his doctor completely. Maybe it's because of the guards screaming and the fear of this place that he is imagining all these things. Then his master was up in the air, tentacles behind him, and he says, "Listen, my useless dog, anyone who tries to run away will see the consequences. So forget this thought in your mind. If you don't want to die, I will give you a punishment worse than this. This time, I won't waste so many people's bodies. Now, anyone who does this, I will make medicine out of them and use it. I did all this just to show you what could happen when you try to run away from here. I hope you all understand." He killed them so brutally to scare them that they would think twice about running away from here. And everyone, upon hearing this, stood below with their heads down, not doing anything out of fear. Then, as the master is going back home, he laughs and says, "There's nothing wrong with helping someone become immortal." At that moment, we learn that the master is actually making medicine to achieve immortality, and everything happening is because of this. As the master passes by Lee, he turns to look at him and says, "Yesterday, those people were trying to escape with you. Why didn't you go with them?" This shows that the master knew those people were planning to take Lee away from this place. But Lee doesn't respond and says to himself, "This is all just a hallucination. I don't need to be afraid of the master. Why should I fear something I've created in my hallucination?" Then, the master places his hand on Lee's head and says, "Very good. You did well by not listening to them and not going with them. You are such a good boy," the master says as he walks away. "From now on, you won't be a worker. You'll be one of the master's special disciples, and your job will be to manage the supply room." Lee understands from this that he has received a promotion, which is a much better job than being a worker. He will only need to help in the supply room, a task that isn't very hard. But this promotion, or reward as you could call it, came to him only because the master had killed many of his guards, and there were not many people left to do the work. Perhaps it was good luck for him that he got this job from the master. As the master walks down the path, something comes to his mind, and he says, "Now, you're not a worker anymore. That's why I thought about giving you a new name. Your name will be Xuanyang." Hearing this, he is shocked because of this name, Xuanyang. The name of the guard is the one whom the master just killed with his own hands, and by giving him this name, it shows that people are killed here as easily as if they were toys. This is also a warning for Lee, because if the master can kill one guard and replace him with another so easily, then one day the master could do the same to him and place someone else in his job. So, as good as this promotion is, it is equally dangerous for him. In his mind, Lee thought, "This crazy man, how dangerous he is. He just killed his own guard and so easily replaced him with someone else, even giving that person his position and name. Here, human life has no value. Then the master gives him a bag. Looking at it, Lee has a question in his mind, wondering what it is and what's inside. Just as he's thinking about it, the master explains, inside, there are 5 pills. Taking them won't make you immortal, but 1 pill will increase your lifespan by 10 years. For example, after taking all 5 pills, your life will be extended by 50 years. And not only that, your strength will also increase greatly, which is necessary to survive in this place. These pills will be very useful to him. Then the master, laughing, says, see, this is how it works here. Good actions bring good rewards, and bad actions bring punishment, which is only death. By not running away with those people, this boy has proven that he is worthy of trust. This is not just for him. If you all work hard and make medicine for me, you too can receive these rewards. Maybe even better rewards than this, so work hard. But Lee, holding the pill in his hand, looks scared as he sees it. He knows that this pill is made from refining human bodies. At that moment, he remembers the girl who the master had killed and used her body to create the pill. Lee wonders if the pill the master gave him contains some part of that girl's essence. This is the most disgusting thing about this pill. Then he comes out of his hallucination and returns to his real world. He couldn't believe that everything he had taken from there had now also appeared in the real world. He placed everything on the bed and looked at it carefully. Maybe it was just a hallucination. That's why he had to check carefully to see if all of this was real or not. To know the truth, he would have to show someone. Lee then looks at the pill in his hand with surprise. If everything the master said is true, then eating this pill would greatly increase his strength and allow him to live much longer, which is a very good thing. He talks to himself, wondering if this really works or not. How would he know? Reluctantly to find out, he decides to use its power. Just as he was about to eat, his friend Nana suddenly pushes the door open angrily, just about to break the door, and says, "Why did you call me here? What's so urgent? I left my class, skipped my meal, and came here because you called me. You made it sound like an earthquake had hit. What happened? Do you have something important to tell me? If there's nothing important, you're going to regret calling me so quickly. If this is just a prank or act like last time, let me know." Lee doesn't say anything and goes to close the door. He looks around, shuts the door, and also closes the windows. Seeing this, Nana gets really embarrassed and says shyly, "What are you doing? Why are you closing everything? There are cameras in this room, and the nurse can hear us. If we do anything, they'll know." Nana thinking that maybe Lee wants to kiss him, or something more than just kiss. That's why she feels even more embarrassed. When Nana says that the nurse might be listening if we do anything, the speaker suddenly plays, and the nurse, laughing, teases them, saying, "Go ahead and do whatever you want. We won't be listening." He takes the pendant in front of Nana and starts talking to the nurse through the speaker, saying, "Will you stop bothering us? Don't you know what privacy is? We can also do something privately." Seeing the pendant, Nana asks, "What is this pendant doing here? And what should I do now?" In response, Lee says, "Don't say anything, and I'll whisper something in your ear. Don't react, just listen. If you react to it, there might be a camera in this room, and that could cause big trouble." Then, after a few days, we see a scene showing that almost 5 days have passed. Lee is thinking in his mind that his family and parents don't trust him. Everyone thinks he's crazy. The only person who trusts him is Nana, who believes in him and doesn't think he's crazy. Lee has complete trust in Nana, knowing he will believe in him and not make fun of him like his family and doctors. Nana is his last hope in this world, the only person who trusts him. At that moment, we look towards the microphone, and the nurse announces through it that his girlfriend has come to meet him again. Meanwhile, Lee had been anxiously waiting for his friend all this time. When he hears this, he understands what it means and becomes very happy. A sweet smile appears on his face. He begins to leave his room, saying, "I knew my friend would definitely come. He would never betray me. I have complete trust in him." He was leaving the room with great joy when some hospital guards started approaching. You know this is a mental hospital, so guards are there to keep control. When Lee notices them, he feels surprised and decides to ask one of them. Maybe he knows one of those guards. He asks, "What happened? Is there a problem? Why are you all going with so much preparation?" That guard quickly tells Lee to close the door and not go outside, no matter what happens or what you hear. He speaks in a way that seems to frighten them. Upon hearing this, he is very surprised and doesn't know what happened. The man then tells him that a crazy patient has escaped from there and is not an ordinary person. He is like a psycho and could kill anyone and do anything. That's why the man warns him to be careful and stay alert. As he leaves, he waves at him and says that if he sees that crazy man, he should definitely let him know. He will make sure that the man never tries tries to run away again. This crazy person only complicates their work, and if they get a chance to handle him properly, they will do even more. Then the man leaves, and he, feeling anxious, tells himself that the crazy man must be dangerous, which is why there's so much commotion. The guard wants to catch him as soon as possible, but he doesn't have time to think about all this nonsense. His friend is waiting for him, and the most important thing is that if he goes outside this time, it's so risky something happens to him, but he doesn't have any other choices. He will still have to go meet his friend, who will be waiting for him. Then he carefully sneaks out to meet his friend, ensuring that no one, especially the escaped psycho, sees him. If that psycho sees him, it could become a huge problem because he is a dangerous lunatic. Somehow, he manages to get outside the hospital and meets his friend in an isolated place. The two of them begin talking privately. Nana, his friend, tells him, "The gold and the pendant you gave me, I sent them off. The pendant was an antique and very old, so it fetched a good price, but the gold was too light, so it didn't sell for much." Hearing Nana say she sold those items, he runs his hand through his hair in style and says, I knew it, I'm not crazy," and then laughs in a very creepy manner. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the place changes, and he starts experiencing hallucinations again. But this time, he isn't scared because he knows there must be a reason behind whatever is happening, or it could all be real. So here some questions arise. What if it really is? What if there are no hallucinations? Can he really die there? And if he dies there, can he die in the real world too? Or maybe when he closes his eyes, he wakes up in someone else's body, and everything happening there is real. Nothing is fake. It could also be that we will find out all this in the story ahead. There's no need to worry. I'm not giving you any spoilers. He hugs his friend Nana tightly in joy, but we see in the image of the manhwa, it is shown that Lee is hugging the white-haired girl, the one he sees in his hallucination. Actually, it was only visible to Lee. He must be hallucinating, and he hugs her tightly, shouting repeatedly, "I'm not crazy, Nana, I'm not crazy." His friend Nana said, "Slowly, let me down. I'll fall." Lee is happy that everything coming from this real world is true, and he might soon be able to leave the hospital. They both talk as they are walking. Lee says that his ability is real. He can bring anything from this world into reality. He still believes that this world is a hallucination, but with his ability, he can bring anything from there into the real world. He thinks that his ability can bring things from the hallucination, but the world in the hallucination is not real. He shares his thoughts with his friend Nana and asks, "Are you ready to become a rich girl? We're going to be very rich with this ability, and all our poverty will end. But until I get caught, I need to carefully take things without getting noticed." In response, Nana punched Lee and said, "I don't want to become rich. Are you crazy? I only care about you. I want you to be fine and get better. That's all I want. I don't need that much money. All I want is for you to be okay. Your health is more important to me than money. And you promise me that despite having this ability, you will still go to the doctor for checkups and take your medicine on time. Whatever medicine the doctor gives you to take, or whatever else they tell you, follow it properly and don't do anything wrong. Promise me." Lee doesn't say anything, but just keeps looking at his friend with loving eyes, realizing how much his friend cares for him. Money is not important to him. His health is, and how much he means to him. Lee promises that his treatment will continue as it is, and he will take all the medicines and follow the doctor's advice properly. Just then, a scary man appears behind them and grabs his friend, pushing him forcefully to the ground. The man is the same crazy one that the hospital guards are looking for. He is a psycho, which is probably why he's doing this. Seeing this, Lee runs away and shouts, "He's my friend! Don't do anything to him! Don't hurt him! Let him go!" As he runs, the psycho grabs his friend tightly, causing Nana immense pain, and he starts screaming. Just when Lee was about to rush to help, the crazy man hits him on the head with a rock, and blood starts pouring from his head as he falls to the ground. At that moment, Lee remembers the medicine that the master had given him during his hallucinations. If the pendant and the gold were real, then the medicine must also be real, and it would give him strength and a longer life. When his friend looks at him with tears in his eyes, Lee, seeing his friend in pain, at that moment, Lee couldn't control his anger and emotions. He takes the medicine that we see in the manhwa image in Nana's eyes. Lee takes the pills, and suddenly, after eating, it felt as if the atmosphere of the place had changed, and he felt immense power in his body. His power aura was so intense that his friend Nana was left speechless upon seeing him, and even the madman stopped in fear. When Psycho turned around to look, just before he could turn his head, Lee hit him hard on the face with his hand and threw him to the ground. He pressed the face hard with his hand that the madman's face broke under the pressure of his hand, and blood began to flow. With such force, Lee tore off the psycho's skin from his face and threw it away, causing the man's entire face to be exposed, and he screamed in intense pain. The scream was horrifying, and looking at Lee, it seemed like he had lost his senses. He was completely out of control. His mind had gone insane because of what had happened to his friend. He didn't know what he was doing. All he kept repeating was, "How dare you touch my friend? Why did you hurt him?" He kept saying this as he continued to beat the psycho. His eyes were completely red, and he shouted, "How dare you ignore my words? I told you to stop hurting my friend, but you didn't listen." It looked like he was no longer human as he was beating the psycho, and it felt as if Lee had transformed into a demon. He had no empathy left, and there was no sympathy in his heart. Then, the hospital guards arrive and catch him, but no one can free him from the psycho. He just wanted to kill the madman, but somehow, many guards joined together to free him, and then chained him down. Clearly, the way he was attacking, no one could see him as a normal person. It seemed like he wasn't as much of a psycho before taking the medicine, but after he took it, he became this way. That's why he was chained up. He screams loudly, "I only did this to protect my friend. I didn't do anything wrong. Let me go. I was just protecting my friend. That's it. Didn't you all see how much pain he caused my friend?" The doctor was standing in front of him. The doctor says, "This isn't a fight. No one hits someone like this, the way you did. You didn't just fight. You beat that psycho with such brutality. You even tore his skin off his face. Is this how you protect someone? Only a psycho would do this. And even worse, that psycho is you. You are no less than a demon, and your true nature has been revealed to us today. Tell me the truth. How did you beat that psycho so brutally? And how did you get so much power? You couldn't even eat properly in the hospital. You were so weak. I've seen you during your checkups every day. So tell me, how did you suddenly gain this strength?" But Lee doesn't tell the doctor anything. He just turns to look at him, probably thinking, if I tell the doctor, he'll think I'm even crazier and might punish me more. So he stays silent. But the doctor continues to intimidate him, saying, "Answer me properly. If you lie, the consequences will be very bad. You haven't seen my true nature yet. When my patients lie to me, I make them feel immense pain. You are still just a child. I've been lenient with you so far, but if you lie, it will be very, very bad for you. The worst kind of bad, something you'll always remember. I'll make you feel like you're in hell while you stay here." But still, Lee didn't say anything. He just kept talking to himself, thinking, "Why should I tell you? You'll just think I'm crazy, and maybe if I say something, the doctor will start doing checkups on me again. Whatever I bring into this world, they'll just take it away from me, and I'll never be able to sell it." The doctor says, "Are you listening to me? Close your eyes." But Lee doesn't close his eyes. The doctor, now angry, says, "I told you to close your eyes," and doesn't explain further. The doctor is furious with him and insists that he close his eyes. Lee finally starts closing his eyes, and as soon as he does, everything around him starts to blur, and he wakes up in his hallucination world, and then, with a sense of happiness, he thinks, maybe this is how it is. In the hospital, they always talk to me, but I'm alone in a place where I'm free, where no one will ask me questions. Here, I have some freedom. Then we see a very large statue of an old man sitting, and there we also see his master. His master says, "Today, a new boy has come to work with us, Huowang. If he makes any mistakes, forgive him. He is new, so he doesn't know about this place and this work, but we hope that he will learn everything slowly." Alongside him, there is also a senior, and the master tells the senior, "Now that you're his senior, it's your duty to tell him everything about this place and teach him everything. Help him." The man thanks the master for giving him this job. The master says, "It's time to go now, and there's nothing left to do. It's 9 o'clock, so let's all go have dinner, and then we'll sleep." But there's something strange. With the master, there's a man who is looking at Lee with strange eyes. It seems that this man might know something about him, and maybe it's because he's new that he's looking at him this way. Lee looks at the man and wonders, why is this man looking at me like that? Am I some girl? Is there something on my face? Maybe that's why he's looking at me. He couldn't understand why the man was staring at him. This was the first time he had seen him in this place, and they didn't even know each other. So why was he looking at him like that? Then we see Lee and his senior walking up the stairs. Lee asks his senior, "Why was that man staring at me like that in front of the master, and who is he?" His senior replies, "His name is senior brother Jenkan." Lee learns from his senior that the man's name is Jenkan. The senior adds, "Ever since Jengjin betrayed the master, now there is only one inner disciple, brother Jenkan, who is the master's trusted person. He handles all the important tasks, and the master trusts him a lot. Whoever you meet in this place, show respect to everyone and talk to them properly. Don't speak badly to anyone or act rudely. If you do, you might end up getting punished by the master. The master is very strict about respect, so don't do that." Since Lee is new, his senior is explaining everything to him. Later, Lee thanks his senior for explaining everything, saying he's new and doesn't know anything. He asks, "Now that I'm the master's official disciple, what should I do next?" His senior replies, "Right now, you're an official disciple, and your job is to handle the supply tasks in this place. But even though you're an official disciple, you're still not very close to the master. If you want to earn the master's trust, you'll have to work hard and always show respect and loyalty to him. Only then can you win the master's heart. If you do well, the master may even teach you about immortality, though right now, he won't. But if Lee keeps working hard, maybe in the future, he will teach him." Hearing about immortality, Lee excitedly started asking his senior, "Can the master really teach me about immortality? When will he teach me? Tell me quickly." He was asking his senior with a lot of excitement. His senior replied, "Right now, the master is not going to teach you because the master doesn't trust anyone easily. Don't be in such a hurry. The master only trusts Jenkan right now. If the master is going to teach someone about immortality, that person has to first win the master's heart. For now, forget about learning it. To learn that, you have to become an inner disciple first. Only then, perhaps, will you be able to learn by earning the master's trust. So, it's not possible right now, and maybe the master won't teach him for some time because many guards deceive him. For this reason, earning his trust is very difficult. It could take 1 or 2 years." Lee, in amazement, started talking to himself. This place is truly amazing. There are so many hidden secrets here. If he could learn about immortality, it would be incredible. After knowing all this about this place, he wants to know even more about the hidden wonders here. But right now, his only focus is on taking something from this place and sending it back to his real world to remove the poverty of himself and his friends. That's all he's thinking about. Then, we see a place where medicines are made by killing people. There, a large cauldron is boiling and something is being added to it. Then the master opens the cauldron, revealing magical medicines. One is green and the other red. Seeing these, Lee's senses almost left him, and he said, "How foolish am I? I was only thinking about taking money from here, but there are so many amazing powers here. If I could take all these powers, I could become very powerful." That's why he wanted to take these magical medicines with him. If he could take them back to the real world, maybe he could even become immortal and use their power to achieve anything. But my opinion, if he takes medicine without knowing the power, something could happen to his body, and it's possible that he might overdose and can't control his power, causing his death because of the medicine. So, it would be better for him to first learn everything about the medicine carefully. Then he thought, right now, I've only got my job, so he focuses on earning master trust so he can teach him about immortality. Then, his master was transferring the medicines into a bottle magically, and then he said, "If you're here for the supplies, go and bring them." The girl with the white hair. Upon hearing this, he just stood there, unable to say anything. His master now wanted to make the medicine by killing his good friend, the girl with white hair, and he wonders how he could bring her here to kill her. In this place, he could never do such a thing, especially not to his friend who calls him brother. Then his master comes in front of him and says, "Didn't you hear me? I said bring the supplies." He had no other choice, so he closed his eyes and returned to his real world. He could never do that with the girl, so he had no other option. When his eyes opened, he saw the doctor and his mom staring at him. After opening his eyes, he asked, "Mom, what are you doing here?" His mom rarely visits him, so he was surprised. Maybe the incident that happened when he was brutally attacked by that madman and that person hit Stone with his head, which the doctor must have informed his mom about, made her worry. His mom was very concerned about how he got hurt on his head and asked, "Do you have a headache? Are you okay, my son?" He replied, "I don't feel any pain. I'm fine. You don't need to worry, Mom. Everything's okay." His mom looks at him and says, "You have become so thin. Don't you eat in the hospital? Don't you like the food here? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? You have become so thin." His mom took out the grape from the bag and said, "This is your favorite, right? I know it. Come on, open your mouth. It's very sweet. You'll like it a lot." While eating, he says, "Mom, don't worry so much about me and don't trouble yourself so much. Are you really here just to spend time with me?" Because he asks, his mom comes here very rarely, and it might be very few times that his mom doesn't get time to come here. Maybe that's why he is asking if you are here to spend time with me. His mom then feeds him all the grapes and talks to him for a while. His mom says, "If you don't get up, the doctor will take me to the crazy man's parents, and I will scold them a lot." His parents are waiting downstairs, so the doctor tells his mom that the crazy old man's family is waiting downstairs, so hurry up or they will leave. His mom says, "Let me talk to my son for a little while longer. There is still something important I want to tell him." Because of this, it's clear that his mom loves Lee so much, and she is very strict with their parents for throwing stones at her son's head. Lee says that he didn't do anything, he just fought with the old man to save his friend. His mom tells him not to worry, that she always trusts him and will handle everything, so he doesn't need to be concerned. Lee looks at his mom with tear-filled eyes, and as she leaves, she tells him to always listen to the doctor and take his medicine on time, assuring him that he will get better soon, and that he doesn't need to be scared because his mom will always be with him. When his mom was about to leave the room, she pretended to be happy, but in reality, she was even more worried because his health was not improving. However, she didn't show her concern or sadness in front of him. Her eyes were filled with anger as she thought about the madman's parents, who had harmed her son and put him in this condition. But the way Lee had fought the madman, perhaps in his case, the injury on his head was nothing. The madman had attacked his friend first, so it was his fault. In anger, she leaves to meet the madman's parents. As Lee looks at his mom, his vision starts to blur. The doctor asks him to close his eyes, saying they will talk later. When he opens his eyes again, he sees his master standing in front of him. The master says, "You're finally awake. How long do you plan to sleep?" Lee quickly apologizes, saying, "Yes, master, I'm sorry for sleeping." He lies, claiming he fainted because he was scared. However, he is deeply troubled and wants to check on the white-haired girl to see if she's okay. As he thinks about returning to find her, his master suddenly grabs his face tightly. Confused and startled, Lee tries to figure out why his master is holding him like that. Just as he's about to ask, his master holds something in his hand and says, "If you're awake now, eat this, my servant." Laughing, the master forcefully shoves it into Lee's mouth. We see tiny octopus-like tentacles wriggling in his mouth. They look alive and are moving. Shocked, he can't comprehend what he's being made to eat. The master had shoved the thing into his mouth so suddenly that Lee hadn't even seen what it was. The master says that eating this will prevent Lee from panicking or being scared. The master probably thinks that when Lee was asked to bring the white-haired girl to this place, he fainted out of fear, but Lee refuses to eat it and says, "I'm not sick, and there's no need to do this to me." He then removes all the black tentacles from his mouth. When we look at him, his tongue has turned black because of this. At that moment, the master orders his 2 guards to force-feed Lee the thing. The 2 guards grab Lee's head with strong hands, holding him firmly with knives. They try to force-feed him while the master stands and says, "Kid, you have to eat this, or they'll make you eat it by force." As Lee was looking at his master, bubbles suddenly started to appear, and his face slowly began to sink into water. The moment his face entered the water, Lee woke up in his world, where his friend Nana was looking at him, calling out to him. Perhaps it was Nana's voice that woke him and brought him back to reality. His friend Nana, visibly worried, asked him if something was wrong or if he had seen something terrible in his hallucination. But Lee stayed silent and didn't say anything about it to Nana. He just kept looking at his friend. At that moment, the doctor, who was standing nearby, caught Lee's attention. When Lee looked at the doctor, his hallucination began again. The doctor asked him what he saw this time. The doctor said, "You're this panicked and screaming when you're in your hallucination." His heart was racing so much, the doctor kept questioning him. Lee thought to himself that he hadn't fully seen what had happened this time, so he decided not to tell the doctor, especially since his friend Nana was standing right in front of him. If Nana heard all of this, he would get scared and start worrying about him. So, Lee simply told the doctor that he hadn't fully seen everything yet and that it wasn't complete. Lee then asked the doctor for medicine, saying he needed a break from this hallucination-filled world. The medicine could stop the hallucinations for a short while, and the doctor, hearing this, was shocked, as it was the first time Lee had ever asked for it. As the doctor was starting to leave the room, he informed Lee that the medicine was already placed on the table. The doctor explained that the medicine only worked temporarily, and that if Lee truly wanted to escape the situation, he would need to apply everything he had been taught. The doctor also mentioned that Lee should let things run their natural course and not interfere with anything. The doctor didn't explain why he said this, but it seemed like he had a reason. Lee's friend Nana handed him the medicine along with a glass of water. Nana was holding 4 to 5 pills in his hand, but Lee panickedly said he didn't need water to take the medicine. Just give me the medicine. As we observed, Lee started hallucinating again and saliva dripped from his mouth. When Lee swallowed the medicine, a black liquid began leaking from his mouth, something he could only see in his hallucination. After taking the medicine, Lee said, "Now I'm saved. After taking this, I won't have any more hallucinations." When Lee said, "I'm safe now," his friend became extremely anxious and started asking him what he meant by that. He worriedly asked if something bad had happened to Lee during his hallucination. His friend kept asking if the hallucination had caused something terrible to happen. Lee didn't want to reveal the truth, but the words slipped out. To ease his friend's worries, Lee acted as though nothing had happened. He laughed and said, "It was just some crazy guy trying to feed me something disgusting and speaking nonsense." He laughed it off in a carefree manner. However, as we focused on Lee's face, we noticed that his mouth had turned black, something he was completely unaware of. Lee then confidently said, "I'm a modern and young guy. These hallucinations don't scare me. I know all of this is nonsense, and none of it could ever happen in reality. So, there's nothing to be afraid of." His friend seemed somewhat reassured, but just then, we saw tentacles starting to emerge from Lee's mouth. Suddenly, Lee found himself back in that strange world without closing his eyes or even falling asleep. The black tentacle they had forced him to eat caused him immense pain. His eyes grew wide, he couldn't breathe, and tears streamed down his face. He kept wondering, how is this happening? I already took the medicine. Despite the medicine, he was back in that world. The strangest part was that he hadn't even closed his eyes, and the medicine was supposed to prevent these hallucinations. Lee began talking to himself, saying, "If I just close my eyes and open them again, I'll return to my real world. Nothing will happen. There's nothing to be afraid of." He kept reassuring himself as he tightly shut his eyes, but when he opened them again, he was still in the same place. His master and the 2 guards stood before him. This time, he couldn't escape. His master said, "Lee, you have hysteria. That's why we gave you this substance. It will cure your hysteria." And now, he can do his job properly. Then, his master and the 2 guards left, laughing, while Lee sat there in unbearable pain, crying. Black tentacles began emerging from his mouth and tears rolled down his cheeks. But Lee wasn't thinking about the pain. Instead, he was consumed by one question. Is this world truly real? And the world I've been returning to with all those people, was that fake? Lee's heart shattered. Everything he had dreamed of, especially the moments with his friend Nana, felt like lies. Could it all be false? He began to believe that this world might be the real one. After all, even though he had taken the medicine and hadn't closed his eyes, he still ended up here. And now, even closing his eyes couldn't bring him back to his so-called real world. Honestly, I can't tell you which world is real either. In this manhwa, it's unclear whether this strange world or Lee's previous one is the truth. The line between reality and illusion is blurred, and even I can't give you a definite answer.